All right, everybody. Happy, what is it, Winter Sports Championship in near summertime?
Yeah,
But I'm Paul Russo, joined by Kyle Evans and Jim Sinicropi. And guys, time to break down, preview, look at some betting and gambling stuff for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals. Two great matchups. I'll obviously jump into both, but
yeah,
good to have both of you here with me today.
yeah. It's a great time of year for sports. It's an underrated because everybody's got spring fever, summer fever now after Memorial Day. But a lot of good prime time sports viewing.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of surprising results. I mean, who would have thought the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights would be in the Stanley Cup? Miami Heat,
Yeah,
8
let
seed.
alone the Heat.
Yeah. So we've had some interesting games and fun games to watch.
Yeah,
I personally think NHL is you always get a little bit of parity, but in the NBA, it's been boring to me. I mean, I seldom even pay attention until the conference finals because you can usually in October pick 3, 4, maybe 5 teams that you're going to see at the end, and it's always one of those 5 teams. And this year was a little different.
yeah, definitely. And South Florida flair this year, a little bit obviously with both Miami and the Florida Panthers, who I think now play technically in Sunrise or something like that. But I mean, we have what I call kind of two de facto 8 seeds, and we'll jump into obviously the Heat's route in, but you look at the Panthers, they were wild card number 2 in the Eastern Conference playoffs for the NHL. And, the Heat, we'll jump in and do NBA Finals first here.
Okay.
The Heat, the East 8 seed against the number 1 seeded out West, Denver Nuggets. And it's been an interesting path for the Heat because they enter in to this playoff run as the 7th seed, the top overall seed in the NBA play-in, lose to the Atlanta Hawks in the first play-in, have to go to the do-or-die second play-in, and with 3:45 left in that game, they're down, losing to the Chicago Bulls, and they come out of it on the other side with a 102-91 victory in that play-in game, the do-or-die one, to advance into the NBA playoffs as an 8 seed. Absolutely incredible,
And now fast forward, month and a half?
give or take.
And here they are in the NBA Finals. But not to be too surprised by it when you consider that Pat Riley, he's their executive GM, right? Is Pat Riley the GM?
He is the president of operations.
Yeah. So here's a guy who's been in the NBA Finals 19 times as a player, coach, or executive.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to 1972 when he was a reserve on the Lakers. That's once every 2.5 years. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, not to say that it is surprising to see Miami here, but when you look at a guy like Pat Riley running the show and a great coach in Eric Spoelstra, it still is surprising, though, in a star-driven league. But Jimmy Butler apparently is that guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll toss it to you with this, Cal, because in our lifetime, so the Heat go up against, really to be fair, 2 of the marquee names at this point in the NBA, with obviously defeating in 7 games the Boston Celtics, right, and the New York Knicks, who still carry just a huge hallmark within a name. Not to discount the Milwaukee Bucks or anything like that, but to go against really 2 brand titans of the sport and 1 classic titan in the Celtics at this point, for a team that's in their 35th year of operation, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, for me, all playoffs long for the Heat. 3-point shooting is really the difference. I mean, you look at games 4, 5, and 6, the Heat were outshot badly from beyond the arc. Last night, they go 50% from the 3-point line, which is crazy. And if you look at the first 3 games when they went up 3-0, they dominated beyond the arc. So that's really the difference nowadays. A lot of times you're just seeing which team shoots better from the 3-point line, and that's really what was the difference in this series.
Yeah, and it's kind of boring, honestly. I mean, it's not like the old days in the NBA where, if you had a big man. So Denver does have a big man, but he's not a traditional big man like the 1980s in the NBA with your Bill Lambiers or Akeem Olajuwons. So I mean, I think Denver comes in as the heavy favorite. more so than even the Knicks or Celtics were against the Heat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned traditional big guys here, and I think this is a nice little transition to talk about Denver here for a quick second. Talk about, say, a traditional big like Dan Issel, but who was the head coach of the Nuggets at one point. Denver, this is their first ever appearance in the NBA Finals.
Carmelo got him close.
Right. And
once.
what's interesting here is I didn't fully realize it until I was looking up some notes and stuff for this. They were the last of the 4 ABA teams from the transition period in the mid-'70s to make the finals, but the only team from that to win a championship so far has been the San Antonio Spurs. Out of the 4, the Spurs, Nuggets, Nets, and Pacers, which is pretty interesting when you kind of think about, say, the path of the Denver Nuggets through history here. They've had big names before, whether you go from David Thompson to Alex English to the 90s with Mutombo to
Chris Jackson.
Right. And you look at Jim, you brought up, right? Carmelo, you look at they've had a bunch of names in history here that you would think that they've gotten to the finals, and they've been on the doorstep before, but they haven't crossed over into that threshold.
To the finals, though, in the NBA is a lot different than, say, having a good college basketball team where you can win a couple games. You got to win these series,
right?
And there's usually in basketball, 7-game series, the better team's going to win, and I don't know if Denver's ever had the better team until now.
Right, definitely. And it's pretty interesting because you bring up perhaps the biggest X factor before that, Jim, in Nikola Jokic within probably this series. Is, we obviously already mentioned Jimmy Butler, and I'm sure his name will be brought up again here, but Jokic kind of playing as if he should have been the one who got the MVP this year, not Joel Embiid throughout this playoff run.
Well, if you watch the playoffs, Sixers, Celtics, and you watch Denver play, it's no comparison. Embiid might, even at nights he puts up big numbers, it doesn't look like he's even trying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, compared to someone like Jokic, that everything goes around him. Like, he makes everybody better, obviously, around him. I mean, averaging a triple-double in the playoffs. I mean, he's like, the NBA's never seen a guy like this.
No. The path for the Nuggets to get to this point, fairly easy compared to the Heat. I won't say they've outright steamrolled through the Western Conference playoffs by any means, but they beat the 8-seeded Timberwolves 4-1. Really, at least numerically, their only hiccup came upon really the 4-seeded Phoenix Suns in the conference semis, a 4-2 victory in the series there, and then sweeping the 7-seeded Lakers in the conference finals. Kyle, fair assessment here. Easier path, or was there still those speed bumps that maybe we've just come to overlook with the Nuggets so far in this playoff run?
Yeah, I thought all along that they were going to do well against the Lakers. I know they have LeBron and Anthony Davis, but for me, I told a lot of people I thought Denver was going to win that series in 5 just because of the depth they have, the three-point shooting. Jokic is not just a scorer, he's a playmaker. I mean, you look, he's got 14, 15 assists a night. He does it all. He's a great defender, gets a lot of blocks. I mean, that team is really, really good, and I think for a while they've been the favorite to win the whole thing, and I think it's going to be very tough for Miami to even get one game, honestly.
I think Denver's heavy favorites, and even, Miami as a high seed going through, I mean, the Celtics aren't that impressive on paper. They come and go as Tatum goes, I guess. They don't have that imposing force in the middle. Philadelphia is kind of just a stereotype of themselves at this point, right? And the same thing with the Knicks. Randall, he's like a poor man's Embiid.
Yeah.
But Denver, they had to beat Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in the semifinals, and then they had to beat LeBron and Anthony Davis, and they did so with relative ease. So now you got the Heat, who I know, Paul, is your team, right?
Yep, that's true.
So as a fan of the Heat, what chance do you give them of continuing this Cinderella run? Because to me, it seems like this is where it ends.
No bias.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is I do have that bit of the homerism coming out a little bit here. It's interesting. I think this is where we can kind of really dive into some of maybe the gambling aspect of this a little bit here, because history does play a part in this. I don't think we can run away from it. Regular season, Denver swept the series 2-0. They only met twice in the regular season, as is the case when you have East versus West. Those two in Denver was a 124-119 victory for the Nuggets. and then a 112-108 victory in Miami this regular season.
I didn't go as far to look at those and see who played and who didn't, because NBA regular season, you got to look into that stuff.
Right.
With all the rest they give.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think to answer the original question to you, Jim, for myself, I can see them maybe giving some fits to Denver a little bit just from the grittiness element of it. I think an interesting part of this too is I've only seen it brought up a couple different times, although, to me anyway, it's a bit of a non-issue because really the main player on the Heat involved in this is now a LA Clipper. When Morris and Jokic got into it last year in the 2021-22 season, you had people call it a brawl. It wasn't a brawl. But look, these teams don't exactly like each other recently, but to that end, the main agitator from Miami side of it's gone. I don't see anything like that happening. I think, the Heat can take the Nuggets 6 games. I don't know about necessarily 7. But like I said, the homer in me really does creep out in this a little bit more than I'd say usual. Because, look, the Pat Riley Heat culture thing is a very real thing.
Yep.
I don't think many people probably generally bought into it going into this playoff run, but the Riley to Spoelstra element, who is now fed into the what I will call they are role players, right? Your Caleb Martins, your Duncan Robinsons, Vincent, my guy Haywood Highsmith.
Tyler Hero might be back.
Yeah, well, and that's a possibility in Game 3, but those guys just come out to play, right? And not to take away anything from the Denver side of thing, right? Whether it's Bruce Brown or KCP or anybody like that, Aaron Gordon, but those guys, they don't know any other way to play but fight, right? In that sense. So it will be interesting. I think I'll table the rest of it for the outright predictions we'll give maybe.
Yeah, let's go.
But it's pretty interesting. So look at it like this: best odds. I did a little bit of the shopping around element, right? Depending upon how you want to look at it. Denver obviously is a big favorite. Money line, the lowest I saw them was on DraftKings at -400. If you're going to go the Heat side of things, the highest I saw was +325 on FanDuel. So obviously, Jim, you mentioned, right, huge favorite involved here, and justifiably so. Denver's been overall the best team in the NBA this year. No surprise to see them jump out and be that big of a favorite early on.
Well, I think Denver's going to win, but I can't put any money on a -350 favorite. I just said, what's the point? So what I'll probably do is I'll let the game start and hope to see Miami jump out to a 8-2 lead or a 12-5 lead and maybe get them at even money if I can. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I'm probably going to lay off it. I might look at player props, but even those are tough. Like, because you look at the numbers for Jokic, for example. Yeah. He's going to need to have a huge game, and I do think Spoelstra's a good coach. I know he'll have a plan for him. I don't know, you can't stop him, but maybe you can contain him so those individual numbers that Jokic has been enjoying through the playoffs are unattainable. But I find this one really tough to figure out a way to find value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the player proper is going to be the way to go overall in the grand scheme of it here. Yep. Obviously, it's tough to game plan out because there aren't lines offered beyond Game 1 yet in terms of individual game to individual game. Game 1 at the moment, the best I've seen is the Heat getting 8.5 currently, and then the over-under 219. Going to be interesting. I would stay away from the over-unders at the moment only because, as we've seen, especially at least on the Heat side of things, it's been more or less defense first. Obviously, shoot 3 and they shoot it well at the moment, but that being said, you look at, say, Game 7 that occurred against Boston, heavy defensive pressure from Miami the whole way.
Yeah, they were impressing late, in that game. You don't see that be too effective in the NBA, but it was for Miami. But, again, I just think that the Heat's run's going to end here, and I can't figure out a way to find value in that belief on the betting lines.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I know I can't remember which book, but they're offering a player prop series bet that Jokic averages a triple-double the whole series, which That's tough. I've been riding Jokic all year in terms of betting, but if there's one place where he tends to usually not progress through a whole game, sometimes it can be the assist column.
But
Yeah.
he is a triple-double so far this playoff averaging.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, but one thing with him too that I don't know if a lot of people are talking about, he does get in foul trouble.
Yeah.
It's a lot of offensive fouls because he tries to charge in to the basket, and that could be a key factor because at times he's been taken out of the game because he has 3 fouls early.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to watch too.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting in terms of that. I know personally too. I've written a lot of. You talk about player prop bets. I think an interesting one to kind of keep an eye on here is the player specifically, player 3 models. I know pretty much every book outside of, I'm trying to think off the top of my head that I haven't seen really much on PointsBet, but your main ones I've seen all have them. And they tend to be fairly friendly, especially say on the alt lines. If you want to not take as much of a profit, taking like a guy like Max Strus for the Heat to get 2+3s. Usually it's been hitting somewhere in the -225-ish range, I've noticed. Kind of something you look at, say, on the opposite end with the Nuggets. Same thing kind of with like Jamal Murray at like the +3+3s. Sits at about the same one. And those guys, they at the very least, they're going to be putting up shots the whole game.
Right.
And stuff like that. So I'm with you, Jim, 100%, especially. This is probably going to be a player prop area series. If there's going to be true value hunting, it's going to be within those numbers. All right.
Is anybody betting the Heat to win this series?
I think
Because that's where you can make
Right.
some money if you believe.
that was last night with me. To be honest, with Game 7 was with that. Yeah, I mean, I think we should jump into it a little bit right here in this. If we have predictions, go ahead and do them.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to screw it. I'll do the homer route here. I got to. What option do I have?
Well, do you believe it? Or
Yeah,
you just
I do
kidding
believe
yourself?
it. I do believe it at
You
this
believe
point.
in the
Yeah.
Heat?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go Heat in 7.
It will.
Heat and
I think it would take 7.
Yeah. I'll go Heat in 7 here.
I mean, with the way the season has gone, I guess it wouldn't be that shocking, even though Denver's really, really good. But I don't think that's happening. I think Denver in 5. I'll say Miami wins Game 4. That's just my random pick, and I think a lot of the games are at least by 10 points.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Miami has had. It wasn't easy. I don't want to make it seem like it's easy, but the Eastern Conference just not as difficult, I think, as the West. And so I just think Denver's going to be too much. And I Denver in 5.
All right.
I wanted to say 4, but they do have a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Back-to-back sweeps for them would be extremely tough, I would think.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they would have won.
And what are they at home this year?
Well,
in the
they would have.
playoffs?
So they got to be on
Oh, yeah.
what's their winning streak, Denver?
They won that 4, and then what was it? The last 2 against Phoenix.
Yeah, it was the last 2 against Phoenix. So a 6-game winning
Yeah,
streak.
so they're on a 6-game winning streak to sweep Miami. They would have to win 4 more for 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll still stick with it.
And
5.
then what are they? 8-0, 9-0 at home, or is it
Denver
even more
5.
now?
Something
Denver's
like that,
very
yeah.
good. They haven't
Yeah.
lost at home.
The Heat did get in, through the play-in, but they were 44-38. Denver was only 53-29.
Right.
So that's 9 more wins on the regular season, which is significant, but it's not a wide margin. It wasn't like, the Nuggets won 83 games.
Right.
But just watching, and I don't watch much regular season NBA. To me, it's one of the worst products going, but that's for another podcast. But in what I've seen in the playoffs, Denver's the best team because they got the best player, and that's usually how it works out, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, NBA Finals tip off Thursday the 1st, June 1st, 8:30 on ABC. All the games will be on ABC for that. Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson on the call for that. Radio, I have to give a shout out to ESPN Radio, which is where we find it because they got my guy PJ Carlissimo on the call.
Nice.
Former
With
Brooklyn
that.
Nets legend.
My guy.
Or New
Big
Jersey Nets at the time.
Big East legend, and it was Brooklyn.
Seton
though.
Hall.
Oh, it
head
was.
coach.
Yep. So, shout out to one of the
He
original.
didn't do too well as an NBA coach.
Well, he never really got fair shakes. He did get choked out by Latrell Sprewell, but
Yes. Yeah.
Was he fired? Right? Is that what it was? He fired?
he
or-
was interim with the Nets, and then, but yeah, the last job with the Nets, he was interim. He was with the Thunder for a little bit, and yeah, I mean, he was with the Warriors during the Latrell years, and
Well, sitting
Anything like
color
that.
commentator, is a little better gig than head coaching, if you ask me. A little less stress,
Just
a little
a little
more
bit.
enjoyable.
Especially for a guy like PJ at this
Yeah.
point.
He
So,
was a hothead back in the Big
yeah,
East days.
yeah. I was about to say, he's not truly one of the original Big East guys, but he's one of the, what I'll call kind of like original characters in that time frame. But
Yep.
all right, let's transition over to Stanley Cup Finals that, again, a little bit of the South Florida flair and features hockey hotbeds, Las Vegas and South Florida. But the East wildcard number 2 seed Florida Panthers against the West Pacific number 1 seed Vegas Golden Knights. Quite the tale between these two teams.
Yeah, but if you take the daily high temperature for both of those places during the home games, I bet it'll break a record for Stanley Cup Finals.
Probably would.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's going to be hot in
Yeah.
in South Florida, and where's Florida? The Panthers play,
I think Sunrise.
Sunrise.
so it's going to be hot and humid, and then of course in Las Vegas it could be 110 degrees.
But it's dry heat.
Right. And they're going to be playing hockey.
Yes, of course.
Well, Canadian NHL fans must be like, what happened to
Since
our
'93.
national sport? 1993. Can you imagine?
Crazy.
30 years.
Yeah. Couldn't be my favorite team, that's for sure. But Kyle, let's start with you because these two teams quite the different paths overall. I think I remember preseason. I know Vegas was like one of those teams where it's like, yeah, they'll be around because it's in their DNA at this point. They're the second youngest team in the league, but with one of the highest success rates within that time in terms of winning. And you look at Florida, where a couple question marks right surrounding them going into the year. I don't know if they fully knew what direction quite they wanted to go. Losing Huberdeau and everything like that. So, what was your, I guess, maybe initial reaction? Maybe so much on the east side than the west when it finally got decided for this matchup.
Well, my biggest takeaway right off the bat is when they took down the President's Trophy winning Boston Bruins,
Right.
who everyone thought they were winning the cup. I mean, obviously I did too. And to do it in Boston to go to the next round was even bigger. And to do it in overtime. And so far still in this playoff run, they are undefeated in overtime. I believe it's 5-0.
Nuts.
And again, they were an 8 seed, like the Miami Heat.
Mm-hmm.
They finished 1 point ahead of the Buffalo Sabres for the final wild card spot.
Yeah.
They were out of a playoff spot for most of April, and they found their way in, and they got hot at the right time, and they've won a lot of games that I think a lot of people thought they would lose, and their goaltending has been amazing. Sergei Bobrovsky's been
That's
outstanding.
the most important thing, right?
Yep,
Gotta get a
goaltending has
goalie
been
hot in
huge.
the playoffs.
And then Matthew Tkachuk, as we all know, has been unreal. A lot of goal scoring, and even Brandon Montour scored the overtime winner against Boston.
9 goals, 12 assists in the postseason for Chuck.
Yep.
And it's funny because you're a Sabres fan, Kyle, and to think that they were basically 1 game separated from Florida, or a point separated going into the postseason, and nobody was thinking NHL Stanley Cup Finals for Buffalo.
Yep.
Nor were they for Florida, but maybe the Sabres aren't so far off as we think.
Yeah, if Buffalo did make it ahead of Florida, I know they wouldn't be in the cup right now. I'm just saying, like, it would have been. I think they would have lost to Boston in 5, but it's crazy how 1 point separated them, and now all of a sudden Florida's in the cup. And
Yeah, it is.
to me, this is the most surprising Stanley Cup final that we've seen in a while, because even on the West side, Edmonton and Connor McDavid's been the favorite all along, and if it wasn't for Edmonton, Dallas was there too as the favorite. So
Tails did not look good
I know. So
in this series against Las
to
Vegas.
me,
Holy
Vegas has been on a hell of a run, just like Florida, and
Mhm.
it's cool to see in these different leagues, like getting new teams in the finals and stuff. It's not the same stuff over and over again.
That's why the Stanley Cup Finals are the best professional sports product outside the NFL. I think. I mean, compared to the NBA, I know a lot of people. Most people are NBA fans over NHL fans, and I wouldn't say I'm an NHL fan, but when the postseason starts in the NHL, I turn it on every night, and you can't take your eyes off it. It's nonstop.
Especially in
action.
close games, it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
atmosphere is
You
outstanding.
get down to the third period in a close game or overtime, which is or game 7 overtime when both seasons teams on. I mean, there's nothing like it in all sports, and
And the physicality that comes with it. The
but it
hard-hitting.
also seems like just you could throw any 2 teams together, and you never know what's going to happen out there. Every game's a little different. It's a much different game than basketball, in the fact that both teams are going to have scoring opportunities.
It comes down to goaltending,
Right.
really.
Now, I do have to shout you out, though, Jim, because you were on quite the little heater there to start. Well, start through, I'd say probably up until about, what, a week and a half or so ago with NHL betting.
Well, because I'm not. I don't know much about the NHL in terms of being able to break it down or analyze it. But when I like to watch it, so of course I'm compelled to put a few dollars on it if I'm going to watch it. And one thing that I noticed early on in these NHL playoffs is like throw the records out the window. Every game's a coin toss. So why would I not take a money line favorite if the odds are good enough? And that's what I did. Anytime an underdog had money line odds of plus 130 or higher, I bet them. And then at one point I won like 7 in a row. So it's crazy to me that you're getting such good odds. Like I don't know how I could ever say, oh, I'm gonna, like even here in the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 1, I think it's a minus 110. Vegas is favored. Why would you bet $10 to win 9
Right.
when you could just take Florida and bet $10 to win 13?
And to that end, you want to look at the grand scheme of the series here. To win the Stanley Cup, the best odds I was able to find, FanDuel for Florida plus 120. And then on WinBet, Vegas had its lowest in terms of being favored at minus 125. So obviously, if you're looking at it from that angle, definitely you have to run the risk of Florida. But it just shows, like you say, Jim, how tight even it's predicting out for the series it really is.
So why then not just take the better odds? Again, I can't sit here like you watch Florida. It looks like nobody can beat them.
Right.
And then you watch Las Vegas last night against Dallas or the past couple games and just freaking destroyed them.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell you what the advantage is going to be. It will come down to goaltending, I suppose. But to me, every one of these games is going to be a coin toss. So as long as I can get advantage on the money line odds, I'll take it. And if not, I won't. And again, just like it's a little different than in basketball, the odds shift so much if a team gets out goes on like an 8-0 run to start the game. All of a sudden you're underdog, now you're a favorite. In the NHL, if a team gets out to a 1-0 lead, that's a bigger deal. So it's tough to live bet those games,
Definitely. Yeah, and I think the broader hockey audience is going to be introduced. We want to talk about goaltending. The Vegas goaltender Aiden Hill, this Stanley Cup final, who I don't know if he'd be coming back anyway, but he's probably been putting Robin Lanier out of a job for sure if he would ever come back for Vegas at this point. But it's interesting. You want to look at these two teams, right? This is Florida's first Stanley Cup appearance, their second overall, first since 1996. And that was only their third year in the league at that point as an expansion team.
Well,
Look
Vegas.
at Vegas, and that's where I was going. Their second Stanley Cup appearance, and their first since they appeared in their inaugural season in 2018.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely crazy, and I think it shows just how maybe less for Florida at this point, but they've had a really good younger core here for the past few years in Florida that I think we now officially know the direction they're going to be heading down here the next couple of years anyway. But you talk about Vegas, who there's still a couple of people hanging around from that inaugural season team, but not a ton. Like Jonathan Marchessault is still there and stuff like that. But for Vegas, they are a very smartly run expansion team that they've had success right away, and you can't deny how frankly good they are just year in year out at this point.
Isn't the expansion? I think the NHL's expansion rules make it easier, obviously, to get a contender right off the start, where most other sports, you're going to need to build it up over time.
Yeah, you look at the Seattle Kraken. I mean, they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
They won the first round, fell short in the second round. But
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, though, I think the difference, though, between Seattle and Vegas, in a sense, from the pool they were kind of going from, I think this was the NHL's, not this past expansion draft, but the one for Vegas. That was their first one since 2002, I believe, right, with Columbus. And I wouldn't say teams were maybe a little bit less aware, but Vegas drafted incredibly smart. Like Florida had Jonathan Marchessault, for example, and left him unprotected. And I mean, that was a guy that he was on the Lightning, and I wanted them to keep him in the worst way, and he was just, unfortunately for the Lightning, a salary cut. at that point. And frankly, I think when teams kind of saw what Vegas did the first time around, they were maybe less keen on leaving certain guys unprotected for Seattle to draw from. But
Well, as a Buffalo
definitely.
fan, since we're appealing to a
yeah,
viewership that a lot of Buffalo Sabres fans, how frustrating.
I was about to say there is a little bit of a Sabre flair within both. To be fair, both these teams.
Eichel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably Vegas's biggest trade. Jack Eichel led the team in points with 66. He's had a ton of playoff points in this playoff run. I would say that's their biggest trade so far in their franchise history. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think they'd be here. Obviously, the goaltending is a big part, but yeah, Jack Eichel he's very good. I'll admit it. Like, yeah, his time it didn't work out in Buffalo, but he's a great player. He's not. I wouldn't consider him a superstar in the league, but he's a great player.
Yeah. He's definitely a star, though.
He's just not on the Connor
Yeah.
McDavid level.
Right. Yeah.
I think he could be, especially with a run like this, and watch again. Qualifying is not a huge NHL guy that knows a lot about. I can't skate backwards,
Yeah.
but in watching these Vegas games, Eichel is a presence out there.
Yeah.
When his line's on the ice, he's making things happen.
Especially on the power play.
Yeah.
I'll say another name. We've mentioned a couple different names here, right, for each team. But another name for each team here for Florida and Vegas, I do want to bring up. Carter Verhaeghe for the Panthers. Is it fair to call him young still? It's weird. He's kind of flown under the radar here the past couple of years up on an NHL roster with the Panthers. But again, another name that I recognize anyway from the Tampa Bay pipeline. And then for Vegas, Ivan Barbashev. Kind of a nice coming out party for him. Again, I think he flew under the radar a lot regular season-wise, and it's been interesting kind of the way Vegas, I talk about the development for the Golden Knights. It's been interesting kind of see these younger guys pop up for them. And frankly, they were on the right way from development when they got the expansion team going and everything, and you're kind of seeing it pay off with some of these guys finally making their presence known, in addition to, right, your Jack Eichels, your Jonathan Marchessaults,
Mark Stone.
stuff like that, Mark Stone. And it's interesting because both Vegas and Florida have big name presences out, but they've been out extended periods of time, right? Patrick Hornquist for the Panthers, he's been out extended due to concussions. Nolan Patrick for Vegas has been out now for well over a year and a half, right? I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. Yeah.
He
I know.
was with St. Louis for a while. I think he was on that team, right, when they made the Cup?
Yeah.
And won
Yeah,
it
he was,
with
yeah.
Ryan O'Reilly in 2019?
So it's crazy. The presence, I think, still kind of with these teams kind of hovering over them, and really, I think, making a difference off ice in a way with both teams. It's been interesting. I mentioned player props here on the NBA side. I think there's better value on the NHL side, though, with in-game stuff. And I'm not talking maybe betting whole game, but I know one bet that I tend to make a lot during the playoffs, and frankly, even in the regular season, one way or another, is looking at the first period. I tend to go personally first period under 1.5 goals, especially in playoff time, right? Because if you're a team, and it goes back to goaltending, if you're going to need to be in the game immediately goaltending wise, or else you're done. I mean, you look at, frankly, the game last night, what was it, 6 of Vegas Dallas. I had to remember back for a second. Vegas jumps on them so quick that at that point the energy is just sapped out of the Stars.
Even that, wasn't it 1-0 after one?
Yeah, and then
You
second
would've won,
period.
you're under. And then they
But the second period just ended up being right away a snowball effect for the Stars.
Right.
They get down even more, ends up being 5-0 in a blink of an eye pretty much. And that's huge. So for me, hockey, I tend to not maybe necessarily look at the player props as I do your period bets and along those lines for whether it's first 5, first 10 minutes, stuff like that for hockey.
Yeah, I think shots on goal, though, is easy to bet. I've done that quite a bit, especially with Jack Eichel, a guy that shoots the puck a lot, especially on the power play. And then on Florida's side, like Kachuk, bet his shots.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do saves if I know a team, gets a lot of shots on goal, like Florida does. Florida shoots a lot on net. So, yeah, I think that sometimes player props are easier in hockey, for me at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to stick with just my, before the game, I'm taking the underdog as long as the odds are favorable. I won't do it if it's like plus 105 or plus 110, but if it gets higher than that, I'll take the underdog blindly.
No.
and then just sit back and enjoy the game. I don't have a rooting interest. I don't care if Florida or Las Vegas wins, like Brooks Koepka.
Hey, Brooksy's for both Miami and Florida. He's been at both, carrying around the trophy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't see him at the Heat game.
Yeah.
So who do you got, Paul? Florida or Vegas?
Yeah, this is interesting here.
I'll pick Vegas, by the way, just to throw it out there. If I had to pick, I've watched a lot of both teams. I'll take Vegas to win in 7, and it will be exponentially more exciting to watch than the NBA Finals.
I'll go Vegas in 6, and it does have to do with goaltending. I think that was, to be fair, the Panthers' biggest question mark all season was this goaltending. You know, Bob wasn't exactly great. Spencer Knight had his own issues going on. I forget the name of the other kid.
Alex Lyon.
Yeah, who got brought up, and don't wrong, he played good, but again,
First 3 games against Boston, though, he killed him.
right, and so I mean that's the thing. But Bobrovsky has kind of come on now strong throughout the other series.
He stole 2 playoff series.
So I don't know. I think that's the biggest question mark for me is just Vegas's goaltending within the longer stretch has just been better than the Panthers. So I'm going Vegas in 6.
I'll take Florida in 7, and Kachuk scores the OT winner
Wow.
in Game 7.
How about that? So for the NHL and Stanley Cup Finals, they're on the Turner family properties. All games will be on TNT. You can stream them elsewhere on
They're
the
not
other.
on the outdoor network.
Right. You can stream them elsewhere, whether it's TBS, True TV, etc. Kenny Albert, your play-by-play man for that. I always mispronounce Eddie's last name, Olchuk.
Olchuk? Or,
Yeah. And then for one final time before he heads back to the NHL front office with the Philadelphia Flyers, Keith Jones. Also,
Man, I miss Doc Emmerich.
same. I missed
Much
Doc.
better than Kenny Albert.
I don't mind Kenny.
Much better.
I just take some images of games I've watched, and I guess the image of Florida scoring in overtime to end Carolina's season, and I think it was in Carolina, right?
Yeah, did the same in Boston too.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing like it. And in the NBA, it's all about the individual, and especially during the regular season, there's all this whining and crying and resting. These freaking hockey players.
Yeah, a lot of them play the full season, 82
Yeah,
games.
and they're out there. I mean,
Getting
they're
hit left and right.
putting it all on the line, and they're not caring who scores the goals or who gives the assist. They are really, it's probably one of the ultimate team games in terms of true, you can't have Wayne Gretzky on your team. That's not going to be enough,
How about the Winnipeg Jets player earlier in the playoffs? 75 stitches right
Yeah.
up here on his head and came back and played.
Yeah, I
Would
mean,
never see that in the NBA.
no, I mean, especially and those are some of the more, I wouldn't say fantastic images, right? But for me, I just remember Stamkos getting a puck in the series against Boston a few years ago in the conference semis, where he gets drilled in the face and he's back out with as they call it, with the cage on. So.
College style.
Yeah, college style. Thank you, Steve Levy. But
You guys are probably too young to remember before they were forced to wear helmets.
yeah, I know because I definitely am too young, but I remember still seeing images specifically of not quite going back to the full-fledged helmet. But I remember Marc Messier had the very rudimentary helmet that he wore because he was grandfathered in, so he wore it through the final years of his career even. And
Well, they should be wearing helmets, obviously. My God.
And a few guys still don't wear face
I
shields.
was about to say there's few and far
like
between.
Jamie Benn,
those,
Dallas
yeah.
Stars, doesn't wear a face shield.
How many guys are grandfathered into that still? Because I remember Chara was one of the last ones. Even
Joe Thornton used to do it for a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But
And not
I-
many anymore.
I
Right.
just got my early days of watching hockey games. These guys are flying around on the ice with their hair flying, and you could recognize the players. And it's different now. It's almost like you can't recognize a player without seeing the number.
And it's so much faster. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
but they got. I mean, that is some dangerous business out there.
Skating on swords.
Especially if you're in person, you're sitting down low to watch the game that close. It's amazing.
Yep.
I was about to say, I went to my first in-person hockey games here for the first time in a few years at the Amerks this year, and you do forget just how violent the sport is. It's nuts. It's crazy.
And even on the minor league level, one step below, like the AHL, it's a little slower than what you're seeing the product on, the professional NHL. But again, if you, I think a lot of my friends who are huge sports fans would never watch an NBA game, and I keep telling them, man, Game 6 tonight, Las Vegas, Dallas, well, you should watch it because it's nothing better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't give the NHL a chance, especially in the playoffs, or even just go to a game, and I think that would change a lot of people's thinking towards the sport, because it's very hard to play and it's so fun in person. There's always, even though there's not a ton of goals, there's always hitting, there's fights, there's crazy saves.
It's always action. To put it bluntly, there's always action.
Little things are impressive to me, like how they're able to stay on sides, get off sides and back on.
And sometimes they drag their feet and just barely hold on.
It's incredible. And I don't know if you remember the play, if you were watching last night's game. It was early on when it was a 1-0 game, and there was a puck up in the air, and it was coming down over the goalie was down. It was coming down. It was probably going to go in the goal, and the Dallas defender just hit it like this out of the air.
Yeah, hand-eye coordination. It's unreal.
And unfortunately, it went over the glass, so it was a penalty. But he saved a goal by, and it was all happening so fast.
And Joe Pavelski tipping pucks in the net from in front of the net, hand-eye coordination's unreal.
Yeah, it is. It's next level stuff. And they said it a long time ago, HD TV was going to really revolutionize the sport, but I don't think it's become more popular because of it, but it sure is incredible to watch, on your big screen TV, HD, Stanley Cup Finals especially. They're going to have a few extra cameras, more camera angles. It's highly enjoyable to watch, and you know what? There's no commercials.
Yeah. I wonder how...
There is briefly, sometimes they break away when there's a penalty for 30 seconds, but really you only get the intermissions.
Yeah, it's way quicker, commercial breaks. But I wonder how the ratings are going to do. A lot of people, they're not probably going to be too interested in Florida and Vegas.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to bring it up because this is actually the first Stanley Cup final to be broadcast on all cable television since 1994 when it was all on ESPN. So it's going to be pretty interesting to kind of see how...
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So...
ESPN's cable.
Right, yeah, it's the first one since then.
Oh, but why? Where has it been since?
NBC.
Yeah.
Either NBC or when it was on ESPN last year, it was on ABC.
as well.
So it's
the
the first one
networks
for everything.
aren't willing to go with it.
That's all contract negotiated. It's all that. That's when it's. That's why partially I think you see the NBA you don't see TNT have the NBA finals at all, even though most fans clamor to have. Really, to be fair, it's the inside NBA crew be having NBA finals opportunities.
Their last game last night.
Yeah. So.
And it looks like all 8 o'clock starts for the Stanley Cup Final?
Yeah, they're all 8 o'clock. I know for the NBA,
when they're in Vegas?
I know for the NBA it's either 8:30 or 8, depending upon the night. I know the Sunday projected games are at 8, whereas the other games are at 8:30.
Yeah, it's so odd because, you complain about these start times in other sports, especially baseball. But if you're going to have a late start time, June's a good time to do it because it's light out till 9 o'clock. So,
yeah, I'm all for the late starts. I love being up at night watching sports.
I'm not going to settle in this time of year until 9 o'clock at least in front of the TV.
Yeah, I don't want a 7 o'clock NBA final or a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
But,
I think that 8 o'clock window is pretty good.
But East Coast, the West Coast, that's not, it's 5 o'clock. I mean, the game will get over before it gets dark.
Yeah, it's going to be an early start for Vegas when they're home.
And
some people probably won't even got to work.
Is Vegas Mountain Time or Pacific?
Is it 2 hours behind or?
That's what I was about to say. I know.
Maybe a 6 o'clock start.
I know Denver is Mountain, so they'll be 6/6:30 for those. But I can't remember if Vegas is Pacific or.
Either way, 5 or 6 o'clock start for in Vegas. I mean, a lot of people are still going to be at work. You have to take time off.
It's Vegas.
Good. I guess good for some East Coast viewers, but not really because, like I said, it's still light out.
Yeah. But yeah.
So what do we give predictions for our final predictions for the Stanley Cup Finals?
I think we did, right? I said Vegas. I said Vegas in 6.
Florida in 7.
Yeah.
And I think I said Vegas in 7.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
You actually gave the winning goal scorer.
Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk. It just seems like the way it's gone, it'll go to overtime and he'll score the goal. And I mean, man, to win the cup in overtime, imagine that feeling for a player and a team and coaches
And fans.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be unbelievable.
All right, so that would pretty much do it then, since we all got our predictions out there and everything like that. So,
You watch the Coca-Cola 600?
oh, I did. That I did. Painful for me. I had Toyota to win, and couldn't quite get
You'll
there.
have to explain the betting to me because at one point Truex Jr. was like in third place pending a restart, and his odds were like plus 7,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? He's in third right now. I should bet this. And then I said, you don't know what you're doing. So, and of course he didn't win, but
I got you. I can help out with that. So,
I'll shoot you a text next time I'm watching a race.
attaboy. Yeah. This Sunday, they're at St. Louis, so it should be fun. So, Kyle, Jim, appreciate the insight as always. Good luck to your guys with your betting for this, and hopefully everybody here can at least come out with some green at the end of the next, what is it, 10 days or so? 10, 15, 2
Good
weeks?
stuff to watch prime time. After this, it's a long...
You get your favorite sport, Major League Baseball.
Hell yeah.
Well, yeah, there's always a lot of baseball. It's just not...
What do we got? 106 games to go still.
That's it?
Long season.
Not quite.
They played 56, so yeah,
Yeah.
106.
Yeah. How about
Well,
that?
we're probably only about, 65, 70 days away from NFL training camps opening up, so...
Yeah. Yeah, that always comes quick, the training camp.
Yeah.
So, all right, appreciate you guys. Good luck to you guys. Good luck to everybody with their
Thanks,
bets.
Paul.
Good luck to the teams. Like, share, and subscribe. So that way, when we get content out like this, you always know that it's coming. And until we talk next time, have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk to everybody later.
That'll do it for this edition of Finger Lakes Today. If you'd like to see more conversations like this one, check out the show on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to the FingerLakes1.com YouTube channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.